Join us on the last bus home.
Let's say 7, 8, sometimes 9 times a day.
Without Red Bull?
It's not mine, so...
Jeez, I'm right. Good going, Lee. It's good going.
Tonight I'm treating you, as I always do. We are looking at some paranormal experiments. I can almost hear your butthole quivering.
I did. I pinched a little bit there. I might have let a little bit of wind out at the same time. It was exciting.
You do you. But, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I don't trust a bunch of nerds deliberately trying to, I don't know, open doorways to hell or demon realms. Just stick to your spreadsheets, mate. Do you know what I mean? When science mixes with the paranormal, I'm like, yeah.
No, that's it. There's no good behind it. It's all nefarious.
Exactly. Stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. That's what I say.
Exactly. Know your place, nerds. No time for science here.
No, screw that.
It just takes up space.
But also imagine dying, crossing over to the spirit realm, and all you're doing is just endless tasks for geeks who are trying to lure you back into the normal realm. Screw that. I ain't playing any tricks for any nerds. Don't know about you. So yeah, what we're going to do, mate, is have a look through some paranormal experiments, mainly focusing on one you might have come across, but there's a lot of stuff to this one. Quite well documented. Evidence, if you can call it that. I certainly can. As you know, I'm a full believer. So have you ever come across in your dealings when you've been going down a rabbit hole, the Scole Experiment?
I can honestly say I do not know.
Ooh.
Maybe under another name, but I can't bring anything to mind.
Nice, mate. Well, let me educate your ass. The Scole Experiment, also known as the Scole Experimental Group. So all it was basically it's a series of seances where they did investigations into like physical mediumship. And these were all conducted in a village the village was called Scole in Norfolk. And this was...
So what, these were an established group?
Yeah, man. Established group with like, say, a full-on investigation.
Like the Gulf Breeze 6.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So this was 1993 to 1998, these guys were around. So it aimed to provide scientific-style evidence for life after death through direct communication and physical phenomenon with spirits. So without relying on traditional things like ectoplasm and stuff like that. It was supposed to be documented, filmed, everything. It was taking as much of a scientific approach as you can, I guess, with this sort of stuff. So these events took place...
Science you can apply to a seance, I suppose.
This is it. So the events took place mostly in the cellar, which was what they called it, the Scole Hole, which I kind of like. That's a cool T-shirt right there. Take me down to the Scole Hole. So yeah, this was basically like a 17th century farmhouse, and that's where they did all the weird shit. So this grew quite a lot of attention for the Society for Psychical Research, the SPR. So I'm going to be mentioning them a fair bit throughout this because these guys basically wanted to know what these guys were all about. So I'll run through some of the main players in this operation. So Robin Foy, born 1943, just to give you an idea of his age. He was like the central organizer. So he was like a writer, researcher. He was a businessman. Lived in Blackpool, but get this, boy, educated at Grimsby Grammar School.
Now, lifer.
That's where the posh kids from Grimsby went. Do you know what I mean?
Posh kids from Grimsby?
Yeah, pal.
There's an oxymoron I've ever heard one.
Got inducted straight into that grammar school if he was a nerd. He considered priesthood, but he thought, nah, I'm going to join the RAF instead as a pilot. So, he's the boy. He had decades of involvement in physical research and psychical research, all sorts of like mediumship circles, that sort of stuff. So he was well into that kind of thing. He founded the Noah's Ark Society to promote safe physical mediumship. Check that out. So he was all about
Noah's
safety.
Ark Society.
Yeah, man. He was all about contacting the spirits, but hey, do it safe. That's why this boy probably never messed with Ouija boards, because he knows the bad shit. So his wife was a trance medium, Sandra Foy. So she and Robin married back in 1979. So she had extensive experience in running home circles for physical phenomenon. So she was seen as naturally attuned to the psychic energies. I mean, we've come across these people, haven't we, who say the mediums and they do all the Derek Akora bullshit. But just be patient. Bear with me on this episode, because when I got through this research, I was a changed
See,
man.
Peasley, I'll hear you out.
Cool. So, as well as the Foys, there was another couple. Swingers, I hear you say. Nope, just paranormal dudes. So Alan and Diana Bennett also joined the Foys to make the main players of the Scole Experiment. So Alan Bennett was a physical and trance medium who joined with his wife, Diana, and they became key to the phenomena. So they were in trances, facilitating communications between the beings. They were like the four main members of the group, and then they started getting other people in through some of the the timeline of some of the occurrences and stuff that they actually saw. And again, I can tell you where to find the evidence if any of our listeners are interested. So the experiment began in late 1992, early 1993, and it was in the pitch dark cellar of the street farmhouse. So sessions were typically done weekly, and like I said, in complete darkness, and this was to aid the phenomena. So participants wore luminous armbands, and that was to basically just kind of see who's there. So, if you felt like somebody had grabbed you, at least you know who it is. Music was played. The group claimed to work with a spirit team, and this, from what I could gather, was like a team of spirits in the spirit realm, and they would come in and go into the little circles when they're in this trance and help them out and do stuff. So I'm going to go into detail about the kind of shit that they saw. So there's lots of cool stuff: orbs, levitations, things appearing. The phenomena basically escalated. There was by the end of it, reports of touches from unseen hands, voices coming out of midair, levitations, as I said, and materializations of forms, which is pretty cool. Couldn't see any reference to shadow beings, but they did make a statement about animal-like beings materializing. So I just think,
was there any regurgitation of warm egg white?
No, because as I said, they didn't really go down the ectoplasm route. This was more about taking pictures of the weird shit that was coming through when there was sat in this circle. Doing all this stuff, it started to obviously get a bit of attention. So that's where the SPR step in. So the SPR are the Society for Psychical Research, and basically psychical means paranormal, psychic, or supernatural phenomenon. So the SPR investigation, that actually began in 1995. So plenty of members, I'm not going to go through them all, but they observed about 18 sittings through August of 1997, and they all witnessed the same sort of shit. So there were certain things that had to follow protocol, which they were kind of getting some skepticism here. So one strange rule was that there was no infrared to be used. I couldn't quite find out why, but there was something about them saying some BS about the spirit realm, kind of saying no to infrared cameras. No idea what that means. Really no idea. I don't think there's some governing body in the spirit realm where they're no, mate, that's not cool. So, as I said, there's been lots of evidence gathered. And where can you see this evidence? You can check out the official Scole website, which is at thescoleexperiment.com. And that has, when I went on it, it's got dedicated pages, and the title's paranormal photographic evidence, and they're all in parts. And they basically just display all these images. And look, you're not going to look at it and be holy shit, that proves it. There's a ghost. It's orbs, it's strange things, stuff that, can definitely be manipulated nowadays. But again, this was back in the 90s, man. We didn't have that kind of shit. No AI then. The glory days. They've done plenty of books.
That was it. And if you were going to fake it, you had to fake it right.
Exactly. Fake it to make it. but yeah, they've released books, and that includes like plate sections with reproduced photos. They've got like Polaroids on there showing basically stuff that they found. So I mean, it's on there. There's documentaries about them. There's a documentary called The Afterlife Investigations, and that's literally on the Scole Experiment. So check that out if we've piqued your interest. So by 1997 to 1998, they'd done over 500 sittings. So these boys were really interested in the Scole Experiment and what it had to offer. And I'm telling you, if you've got a bunch of academics, right, you're not going to do 500 sittings if after the first 10 sittings you're like, this is BS. Do you know what I mean? You've got to stick with it. So again, mate, that tells me that this shit is true. The group claimed towards the end of it that they fear that they may have opened an interdimensional doorway. Now, that piqued my interest, because when you get dimensions going in, now we are getting into the science. And again, this is what turned me into a believer. But this all ended November 1998. So new communicators reportedly say contact with the main spirit team was lost. Okay. So it was almost like this is getting too much, and the spirit realm was basically shutting it down. We're not doing this anymore. And they told the people in the trance, on your way. So this kind of basically ended. You're going to think, so what do we have, 1993 to 1998? We must have a lot of evidence and things like that. So I'm just going to go through a few of like the SPR report findings. And basically they said this was true. They didn't come away from this going, no, these guys are BS. And they would do, because I mean, they've done lots of other investigations where they're like, no, this is all trickery. This one, they basically said, we're good. So the investigators concluded that the phenomena they witnessed was genuine and most likely produced by discarnate spirit entities rather than fraud, hallucination, or just normal means. So in the report, they emphasized no direct evidence or fraud of deception was found despite really close observations. Like I say, they were sat there in the circle, everything. So sitters had little financial motive. That's what they said. They earned modest fees for some events, but declined SPR financial help. So they really weren't doing this for the money. The phenomena that they were seeing it was consistent. It was often interactive, which is interesting, and it appeared intelligent. So it wasn't just like orbs appearing and disappearing. They could kind of communicate with it.
With the orbs?
With the orbs, yeah. So it basically that was in the experiment. So it was almost like these were kind of intelligent beings. Do you know what I mean? Many events occurred under conditions where the investigators believed trickery was just basically highly improbable. So they really set the kind of like markers in there to be like, don't pull any fast ones, and they didn't. I just want to go into a little bit of detail now about what they actually saw, right? Okay, so we'll go through some of the key categories of the phenomena, and this was all experienced in the skull hole. That's how you know it means business, right? And again, this was all and this was all done in total darkness, but this is some of the stuff they got, right? So let's go into the orbs. So these were classed as luminous phenomena, right? So most frequently reported and striking, basically like they would come really vibrant. So they said that these were intelligent, responsive orbs or point of light that darted at high speed, changed shape, size, entered solid objects, so kind of went through stuff, levitated items, responded to verbal or thought commands. That's where the intelligent kind of form comes from, and sometimes formed pillars or humanoid shapes. So investigators argued that these could not easily be replicated with like any known equipment, especially in the dark. They had plenty of like photographic and film impressions. All things like they had images, symbols on them. Things like Latin phrases were written, fragments of poetry, alchemic signs they saw. Personal messages were appearing on like factory sealed and exposed film, which was quite strange. And again, there's examples of this on the website. There was a lot of auditory phenomena. So as I mentioned earlier, direct voices just coming out of midair. Music, which was strange, hearing like pieces of like classical music off in the distance, as if it was like played on an old-timey radio, then it would just kind of like disappear or move around them. Lots of like loud knocking, like, like rapping on the door, like real like rapid banging, which would scare the shit out of me, and lots of other sounds. And these were all recorded on tape. And again, stuff there for you to like listen to on the documentary. Really, really like creepy. Again, can it be replicated now? Yeah, piss easy. But so as well as that, there was some kinetic phenomena. Again, as I mentioned, like touches from unseen hands, lots of objects moving about, levitations, table tilting, coins, jewelry just kind of like appearing or disappearing, water sprinkles, materializations of forms. Like I was saying, there was like animals and things like that. So lots of stuff going on. Transcommunications, as I mentioned earlier. So this was via the mediums. So they would get messages. They would try to give messages back. And like I say, they were like communicating almost with the orbs. And that's when they thought that, shit, we just opened an interdimensional doorway, because these seem to be like intelligent beings. And then you kind of lose the general sort of theory that, are these dead people? Are these spirits? Really? Is this what spirits do? Move coins about? Do you know what I mean? For all eternity?
Yeah, that's it. What I find is, we hear stories about them appearing and scaring people and threatening people and pushing people. It's not often. Mostly it's stuff like they move a cup. Surely some of these people who've died have had an interest in these things and have wanted to come back and prove something, like the escapologist fella. Houdini, him and his wife, they said if one died, the other one would definitely show the other one.
Yeah.
But it turns out you don't get a choice. So maybe, I don't know, is it your virtue, you're ranked in the afterlife, and it's like, you're not good enough to be able to...
Nah, I don't know about all that shit. That's why I'm fully bought on the interdimensional kind of theory. It makes more sense to me that these are non-human intelligence as opposed to spirits of like dead people. I just don't buy that kind of thing. It's true. I mean, definitely hauntings, like we've talked before, where something really bad happens and it holds that energy. Maybe that can hold a spirit, but I refuse to believe it's just loved ones going around messing with people and showing themselves as orbs. Makes sense.
So what do you think about like the scene in Ghost, Patrick Swayze's Ghost, where he had to be taught how to move something? So if you go out there and you don't bump into a mentor, and you just don't get taught how to interfere with our world, maybe that's how it is.
Hey, I'm open to anything. You know me. And I'm all about the Swayzemeister, but I don't know. I'll take your Patrick Swayze and I'll put them up against two interdimensional non-human intelligence, and we see who kicks each other's ass. So we've kind of like gone through them. So some of their approaches to get this, because, do you know what I mean? This is, again, I'm going through a lot of supposed evidence here, but how did they exactly measure all this stuff? As I said, sessions were mostly in like complete darkness, but the investigators, what they did, they literally sat opposite the mediums. So it was a full-on kind of like intense investigation. Some searches and controls were used, but not rigorous like body searches or constant physical restraint, anything like that. There was film protocols involved through like consultation with the spirits. Investigators marked containers, used their own film at times. So, they tried to basically say there was no tampering, stuff like that. Sittings occurred in like the medium's home, but also at other locations. They did like sit-ins in like Ibiza, California, Germany. Do you know what I mean? So they went around.
Anywhere in the world. We've got a job for you, Harry. We're going to send you to Ibiza for 2 weeks so you can sit with this fella for half an hour and watch him get drunk and like do fuck all in the dark.
So, I mean, basically concluded all this stuff. So there was extensive documentation, many hours of like observing these sit-ins. So they came out of it pretty much like, yeah, these boys are real. but also it had its critics, as it would. So the SPR study then, I suppose, was open to critique and review, and then all the naysayers come in with the bullshit excuses as to why we're seeing this stuff. They were coming up with all kinds of stuff, lack of controls. Why are you doing this stuff in the dark? What's your problem, eh? Venue and access. So many of the sessions was done in the Foy's basement. As I said, they were done in other areas, but it was a very invitation only kind of gig. So it was so you say this stuff happened, but you're not going to invite everyone around, to see this stuff. Because that's why I always think, imagine how famous you could get if you were just mate, we can literally call on the spirit realm. Give us 10 quid and you can see it too. Do you know what I mean? There was film issues as well. Not all under full investigative controls. Again, I mean, the SPR used their film. These guys used their film, but, we're not seeing it done on a wide scale. And again, there was all this stuff about you can't use infrared. I mean, they just said the spirit realm told them, but, didn't really give a reason why. So I think if you take the whole thing, mate, the Scole report is a landmark in modern physical research, mediumship, whatever you want to call it. It was done on a massive scale, basically. Nothing like this was ever done on this kind of scale. And whether you call them credible or not, the SPR figures that were involved were respected as being, pretty thorough, scientific kind of investigators. It provided a lot of multi-witness testimonies as well. So, there was lots of stuff in there. As I said, it did have its naysayers, but I think it seemed to be up there in one of the biggest sort of paranormal investigations. So that was a Scole experiment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to just a few little notable mentions, because when I start getting into this, there's lots of paranormal experiments going on, all kind of similar to the Scole experiment. So what I think it did was kind of made a bit of a boom just by the evidence it was showing. I think it made a lot of copycat investigators. So before I move on to them, mate, what do you think about the Scole experiment? Just high level view.
High level, I respect the. I respect the scrutiny, but I do have to question the purpose of it. I don't feel confident it was independent.
Right.
It reminds me what you've said there. Noetic sciences or pseudoscience.
And that's group activity?
Yeah, where everybody gets together and thinks about the same thing to make it real.
Yeah.
Kind of like creating a tulpa, but I think that's a completely different episode right there. Tulpas are something else. And we will cover it, listener. A tulpa is something that you create in your mind and it becomes real, but we'll cover that another time. Yeah. But noetic science, pseudoscience is you get 1,000, 2,000 people in one place and they all think about a fire on a certain place and said place bursts into flames. It's noetic, Noetic. Noetic sciences is actually a discipline. There's an Institute of Noetic Sciences. It was founded by an astronaut in 1973. But the Noetic Sciences is there's a I don't know. I'd say there's a good book about it if you're a Dan Brown fan. If you're not a Dan Brown fan, there's a shit book about it. But the Noetic Sciences is my point.
Yeah.
Which is group think.
I think it's it explains the planchette moving on the Ouija board, doesn't it? It's not a spirit moving it; it's everybody's group kind of participation, kind of moving.
Subconscious.
Yeah. So I kind of dig that. But yeah, I think that's generally what the Scole sort of experiment was doing. It was from a group, and they were able to kind of I suppose, attract the attention of non-human intelligence. Which
is the point. when you get the psychical research guys in to look at something, you're pulling in people who are susceptible.
Yeah, it's a tricky one to go down. Maybe a non-believer, the spirit realm's going to be like, no, we're not showing ourselves in front of this guy. So yeah, what I'll do is to end us up there, I'm just going to go through a few notable mentions, because like I say, when I got into this stuff, I was coming across all kinds of paranormal experiments. But again, I'm not going to go into detail. We'll just quickly run through a few. So a few earlier ones was the Philip experiment in Toronto back in 1972, and this ran to 1974. And this stands out as a deliberate creative experiment, closest in experimental spirit to that of like the Scole Experiment. So led by a Dr. ARG, I could only get his initials, Owen, and the Toronto Society for Physical Research. 8 ordinary people, no-claim mediums, invented a fictional ghost named Philip Aylesford with a detailed backstory. And this was all done through seances, again, with like dim lighting, singing, and they had to have that focused intent. So they reportedly produced table raps, so similar to the one banging on tables, table tilting, things were answering questions. So again, really similar to like the Scole Experiment. And this seemed to be done through, sort of like that meditation kind of state. So it suggested phenomena could arise from the group expectation, psychokinesis rather than discarnate spirits like the Scole Experiment. So exactly what we were just talking about. No full materializations occurred in this one. So again, it was more kind of like that they were basically thought they were getting in touch with something through like this collective kind of thought. And again, they came up with this backstory for this fictional ghost, but they all did it kind of, together, and they all kind of saw it and was getting messages from this type of thing. So again, definitely kind of backs up our group kind of theory on that. The Rosenheim poltergeist, 1967, Germany. So this was investigated by parapsychologist Hans Bender and others, including technicians from the Siemens and the post office. So in a law office, electrical disturbances, lights swinging, exploding, things like that, objects moving, copier fluid just flowing out everywhere, lots of phenomena. So this phenomenon was instrumentally recorded, and it seemed intelligent at times, again, similar to like the Scole experiments. So it's one of the best documented modern poltergeist cases as well. So poltergeist, I'm guessing there was a little bit more movement of stuff than maybe the Scole saw. So kind of a cool one. Some later ones, don't know if you've heard of this one, the Felix Experimental Group. So this is based in Germany, and this is 2000s onward. There's no sort of end to this one. So often compared directly to Scole. So you can see how Scole kind of like, it brought the kind of the need for this sort of stuff. So phenomena.
Set a standard.
Exactly. Yeah. Brought a buzz about it basically. So phenomena included lights, levitations, and ectoplasm in this one. So it materialized in seances. So investigated by researchers like Stephen Broad and Michael Nahm with varying controls, some video in red light as well, which the Scole was like dead against. Highly controversial because this one did have strong claims of fraud, like hidden devices, a few confessions, stuff like that. So deal with this how you want to do. But again, I think they basically just tried to copy all the Scole's kind of like setup. So it definitely led the way to a few of these things being set up. And if you want to do your own sort of investigations into it, it seems to be like a lot of these groups are forming and they're all getting the various kind of like evidence, pictures, things like that. But it's all the same. It's kind of like groups, and it's, it has to be done in group activity. You have to clear your mind. You have to go in this trance-like state. And then with good intent, that's when these things start basically showing themselves to you. And then I guess you can manipulate them. You can ask them questions. You can get them to maybe move stuff around. Kind of cool. I like it. What's your thoughts? I'm guessing you're coming from a highly skeptical view here. And don't forget, these are science geeks.
Oh, no. I don't think there's a control there strong enough for me to think anyone's impartial.
Yeah, I just think, like I say, you do need a.
And that's why you get people like myself, which is I'll believe it when I see it. You can tell me all you want.
I get what you're saying. I'm still going to stay with you. You just got to have at least an open mind, because I know my mate who fits fireplaces, is your everyman. He likes getting dirty. He would literally see orbs and go, "Fuck that! Who's doing that?" He just wouldn't believe anything. Do you know what I mean? You're going to get those people as well, and I don't think these things are going to show themselves to those type of people. You've got to have a bit of intent, a little bit, or at least an open mind. Let's say that. Let's draw the line at an open mind.
So are we thinking that maybe spirits, ghosts, entities, pan-dimensional beings are shy? So if you're in a pub, karaoke night, and your mate says, "Go on, get up and sing that," and you're like, "Get away." But then the whole pub starts chanting it, and you're like, "All right." And you'll get up and sing it because the whole room wants it. And you think, yeah, I might be okay. Do you think it's like that? When we come into the noetic kind of thing, if there's enough people calling you, you'll come forward?
Yeah, you've nailed it kind of thing. I think Yeah, you've nailed it. I think if you have enough people with, again, like I say, and that's where you need the intent, you can't have a bunch of naysayers going, "This is fucking bullshit, nothing's going to happen." You need people to be like, "Come on, we need to see this." And I think that energy, collective energy, does invite them in. It brings them forward. But yes, mate, I'm sold. So I'm a believer in the psychical experiments. I'm all about that life. I'd like to attend a few of my own. And as you know, my intent is 100%. So I'll be seeing all kinds of crazy shit.
No, I'm into it. I really am. And I love that people are doing it. If you want to win people over, you've got you got to try harder with your controls.
Yeah,
I think for me.
You can't have too many controls. I'll say that. You can never have too many controls. But yes, mate. Well, whether you believe it or not, these experiments are still going on to this day. So hopefully we make a revelation someday and we get full video evidence of shit being moved without strings. But we'll wait for that day.
Well, yep, hopefully.
So, mates, that brings us to the end of the line. And I believe this is my stop.
Yeah, no, mine's the one after. So,
ding, ding, mate. Catch you on the next one.
Bye-bye.